All right, let's talk about taxes. Maybe do the short version. The U.S. tax code is extremely stupid, but as Christians, we're obligated to pay them. So there we go. That is it. Let me give you some quotes and things here. Some of these are a little bit old, but that even in some cases makes it even more amazing because it's gotten worse since then. All right, Jimmy Carter, anybody know him? In 76, he was a Democrat president, liberal, peanut farmer. My dad always talks about, you've got more, shoes than Carter's got peanuts or something. That's but anyway, crazy liberal Democrat. Bernie Sanders is possibly to the left of him, and Obama, but he's a crazy liberal guy. But he said this: "Our tax system is a disgrace to the human race." Maybe he was arguing that it wasn't progressive enough or something, but a disgrace. Reagan, a little more conservative guy in 83, said, "Our federal tax system is, in short, utterly impossible, utterly unjust, completely counterproductive. It reeks with injustice and is fundamentally un-American. It has earned a rebellion, and it's time we rebelled." So if you've heard of the Reagan Revolution, that is part of it. The Treasury Secretary in 2002 said, "I believe the current tax code is an abomination that cries out for vast simplification and reform." I've not heard serious talk about actually doing that recently, but it has come up in the past. I remember seeing a cartoon strip of the Democrat simplified tax form. Have you guys ever filled out the 1040 form, that thing? And it was the 1040, the proposed simplified tax form. The first line was, state your income. And then the second line was, send that to us. The Democrat simplified tax code. So that Bernie Sanders is at least honest. He says, I'm going to raise taxes. He's wanting to give away everything, free schooling, completely free health care, give away all kinds of stuff. And he is actually saying I have to raise taxes. So in 2006, I don't know who did all the counting, but there were 17,000 pages of tax regulations. Maybe I should have you read that as part of the requirements. That is the cure for the insomnia right there. 569 different tax forms. You might fill out one, but if you get... there's just every conceivable thing under the sun. There's another form for it. I rent out the apartment in my house, and that generates a whole wave of forms that have to be filled out, and where the income comes from, and if I spend money to maintain the apartment, there's other forms that come. It's just on and on and on. 569 of those things. This is why there are tax firms, all right, because it is a confusing mess. Also in the tax code, especially if the government comes after you, the whole legal system is turned upside down. You are presumed guilty for the most part, and you have to prove that you're innocent. They'll come after you and say, you filed your taxes wrong, you cheated us out of $10,000, and you have to go and prove that you're innocent. They don't have to prove that you did it wrong. They make the accusation, and you prove that you're innocent. Actually, and I thought of it, this happened to me. When you file state and federal separately, and the federal government, I didn't realize this till this point, reports the numbers that I give to them to the state, and the state compares them with the numbers that I report to them. And the federal government got the numbers wrong on my tax form that they sent to the state. So the state thought I gave the federal government one income and gave them a significantly lower income to figure out my taxes on. So the state came after me and said, you owe us all this money because you filed it. And it was up to me to go to the federal government and hunt down the whole rabbit trail and get different bureaucrats to open up all the files and follow it through. It took several months to weed through the whole thing. I had to prove that I was innocent, that the federal government messed it up. And when it was all said and done, they just said, okay, we're sorry. You don't have to pay. I really wanted to send them a bill, but I knew it wouldn't go anywhere. But anyway, it turns the whole thing upside down. It wasn't that they had to come and prove that I was innocent. They thought I was guilty, and I had to prove the other way. So anyway, the whole thing is a complete gigantic mess. So, all right, we're ready to dive into it? That was just to get us excited. So, All right, first thing, what does the Bible say about taxes? I just have two points to make, and I've already told you one of them. First point is that Jesus said we should pay taxes to those whom they are due. We should pay them. Who wants to read? Just one person. We can't all do this. Jacob was first. All right, we're Matthew 22. This is hopefully not... Yeah, Matthew 22, we'll start in verse 16. We have the same story again in Mark 12 and again in Luke 20. We're not going to read all three. I think we can just read Matthew 22. 16 through, I've got 22 marked down here. I think that'll probably take care of it.
16 through 22. And they sent out unto him their disciples with the Herodians, saying, Master, we know that thou art true and teachest the way of God in truth. Neither carest thou for any man, for thou regardest not the person of men. Tell us therefore, what thinkest thou? Is it lawful to give tribute unto Caesar or not?
Just a completely different side note. Notice how they come in with this glowing compliment. Whenever people come to you with that type of, you're such a great teacher, man, I love sitting in your class, you just brace for it. Right? There's something painful coming. So, and right there it was, that question. Go ahead.
And Jesus perceived their wickedness and said, Why tempt ye me, ye hypocrites? Show me the tribute money. And they brought unto him a penny. And he said unto them, Whose is this image and superscription? They said unto him, Caesar's. Then saith he unto them, Render therefore unto Caesar the things which are Caesar's, and unto God the things that are God's. And they had heard these words. When they had heard these words, they marveled and left him and went their way.
Okay, he gave a very good answer, even outside this context, to their question. They were trying to trip him up, but there he says, "You pay taxes to the person they're due." I mean, if you're going to live in the U.S., then you should pay taxes. He doesn't advocate not paying taxes. Let's go back to Matthew 17. Look at one more passage here. This sometimes gets referenced very, I think, faultily for people as saying that you're not obligated to pay taxes to the government. Let's see, down in verse 24. I can read it if nobody wants to.
24?
Yeah, Christina, I thought was volunteering. She moved her hand at the wrong time, but her Bible's not even open. So, yeah, 24. Frank, you got it.
And when they were come to Capernaum, they that received tribute money came to Peter and said, Doth not your master pay tribute? He saith, Yes. And when he was come into the house, Jesus prevented him, saying, What thinkest thou, Simon? Of whom do the kings of the earth take custom or tribute? Of their own children or of strangers? Peter saith unto him, Of strangers. Jesus saith unto him, Then are the children free. Okay,
often people stop there and say, look, Jesus said don't pay your taxes. What thinkest thou, Simon? What are you thinking, paying your taxes? Right? But if you look in verse 27, it kind of undermines the whole thought.
Notwithstanding, lest we should offend them, go thou to the sea, and cast an hook, and take up fish that first cometh up. And when thou hast opened his mouth, thou shalt find a piece of money. That take, and give unto them for me and thee. Okay. So he was making a point generally about spiritual things. And then he says, you know what? But pay the taxes, right? He was not making this general point here that we should be tax evaders and not pay them. So paying our taxes. Jesus says we should pay taxes to those whom they are due. Okay. Anybody ever bumped into people that don't pay income taxes or things like that? Or heard of them? My wife's family, when she was a kid, they moved a couple times and were in a church for a while where they didn't pay income taxes. And I don't know. It's hard scripturally to support that. A lot of people say, oh, they were passed unconstitutionally. Or, they're trying to go through some rigmarole about how they weren't passed unconstitutionally. No. We need to pay them, right? We should pay our taxes. All right. Next point. So we should pay our taxes. I mean, that's our obligation. We should do that. If you don't want to pay taxes to the U.S. government, what would be the right solution to that? Maybe phrase the question differently. If you don't like what Burger King charges, you don't want to pay Burger King for a Whopper,
what would be the right Christian thing to do? Go somewhere else. Don't go in there and steal a Whopper. Go somewhere else, right? And really, if you don't want to pay taxes to the U.S. government, the right thing to do would be, well, then leave. There's nothing keeping you here. You can go someplace else and pay that government taxes, right? That would be fine. So, all right, so we should pay them. Second thing is we need to pay our taxes so the government can do its job. I don't know of any examples, but it'd be at least interesting to hear some of those people that say they're not going to pay their taxes. What happens when their child gets murdered or their house gets robbed? Are they going to say, well, I didn't pay taxes, I don't expect the government to help me solve this crime? Probably not. Right? They're going to want the government to do its job. So let's go back to Romans 13. Romans, going way past it. All right, this is a passage we look at first semester some. It lays out for us the reason we have a government. If you look in verse 3, it says, "For rulers are not a terror to good works, but to the evil. Wilt thou not then be afraid of the power? Do that which is good, and thou shalt have praise of the same." So the rulers are a terror to evil things, not good things. So stopping crime, stopping that type of thing. Look down at verse 6. For this cause pay ye tribute also, for they are God's ministers, attending continually upon this very thing. If we want to have a U.S. military to protect us from crazy Muslims and others that want to kill us, if we want to have an FBI that spends thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars hunting down people that foolishly send above top secret information on a private server, right? So think about the expense of hunting that down. There's a lot of money spent. If we want to have an FBI to hunt down crime, all those types of things, or even local police, it takes money. So we need to pay our money so we can have those things. It doesn't, unless you're the current U.S. government, you can't print money, and even that's just a facade that won't last forever. So, all right, so we need to pay our taxes so the government can do its job. All right? I have one other thing to mention here, but to me those are the two main points. But sometimes people will bring up a thought like, I don't want my money going to support the immoral things that the U.S. government supports. I mean, we've collectively as a nation paid for abortions and all kinds of stuff like that. And they would say, I don't want my money going to that. And then would use that as an argument to not pay their taxes. Does that hold water? Is there any truth to that? I mean, should you look at how the U.S. government spends its money and figure out, okay, this stuff is immoral, maybe 30% of it, so I'm going to pay 70% of my taxes and not pay that portion? What do we think about that?
You put them in office, so you have to abide by what they say.
Okay, yeah, again, if you don't like what they're spending money on, you can move. We elected them. So. That doesn't hold any water. Right? That doesn't give us an excuse to not pay our taxes. Can we think of a reason? Beyond that.
I'm sure Caesar was sure there was corruption then, and Jesus still told him to pay.
Yeah, if you think about the government that Jesus was saying we should pay our taxes to, they killed him. And he still paid tax. The soldiers that executed him, he could say, well, I'm not going to pay the salary of the people that are going to drive the spikes in my hands. No, he paid taxes to that very government. And if you know much about Roman history, we have a pretty moral government today. Right? They're a pretty corrupt group. So even that, you can think, oh yeah, I don't want to support that kind of evil stuff. Yeah, but it's not. You're not held responsible for that. God tells us to pay our taxes. Those in government, God might hold responsible for that, but I'm not personally held responsible for what the government does with that money. So just like Jesus wasn't personally held responsible for that stuff. So, okay. So anyway, even that. Doesn't hold any water. We should pay our taxes. And really, what the government does with it isn't a factor in that decision. No, I think we should be very actively involved with politics to prevent the government from doing stuff like that, but not required. So. Okay. Questions on that? Any good jokes this morning? Nothing. All right, we're going to get even more exciting here and talk about our tax code. Woohoo! I mean, this is just one thrill to the next.
we'll end it with talking about how to reform this whole mess. And, maybe we'll perk up a little bit at that point, but we'll see. All right, our tax system, this whole thing. The first thing I have is a little bit of the history of our tax system. This is just barely skimming the surface of just a little history of it. A couple of general points, and then we'll look at some different pieces of our tax code. First thing is the history. For the first half or so of U.S. history, most of the government's, especially the national level government's money, came from tariffs. They would charge money to other countries bringing stuff in. That was where most of the money came from. That all changes. We actually already talked about that some. What changed that?
The income tax?
Yeah, the income tax. After that comes along, the government doesn't rely so heavily on the tariff. They rely very heavily on the income tax. And that first income tax, in 1918, they raised the rates for the top levels up to 6%. We were just talking about outrageously 6%. The top rates, we have had them up until around 80%. That's incredible to think about. You make all the money above a certain point, you're paying 80% of it to the U.S. government. Reagan mentions when he was working in the movies that there are years that he just quit working. Why do another movie? I've got to pay 80% in taxes. I'll stay home. All right, so anyway, we've had them very high. The top rate now is somewhere around 33 something and some change. Still way too high. But anyway, after 1913, we see the government very, very quickly shifting to where they rely on this income tax and not so much, very little on the tariff. So, all right, second thing here, that kind of is just very, very, very brief history. The second thing is that today the tax code is used to encourage or discourage certain activities, or if you want to use a fancier term, it's used for social engineering. There are all kinds of things that are taxed or not taxed, or you get deductions for, that type of thing. Things that the government thinks should be encouraged or thinks should be discouraged. There is a mortgage interest deduction. If you have a mortgage on a house, the amount you pay in interest you don't have to pay taxes on. There's a child tax credit if you have children that are dependent on you, in your house. You get a credit back for them. If you put money into an IRA, a retirement account, it gets handled differently. I don't know if Indiana still has it, but they used to have a tax credit for insulating your house. Right, trying to encourage energy efficiency. It's been about 10 years ago. I forget what I got. It was $600 or $700 worth of credit for insulating my house. Right? So what the government does is it takes things that they're trying to encourage. They're trying to encourage people to save for retirement. So they'll give you a tax break one way or the other for saving for retirement, or they're trying to help families out. So they'll take people that have children and give them a special tax credit and other things like that. So it's used a lot for social engineering, really, the government looking at society and thinking, we've got this problem over here, so let's tinker with the tax code to make it financially in your interest to do whatever the government wants. And it really is way beyond the job is to collect money to pay for the government, not to tinker with society. There's a lot of things in our society that are skewed because of this tax code, people trying to abide by it. So anyway, today we have lots and lots of that types of things, that type of thing. Let me give you one example, or maybe I benefit from this thing greatly, but I still think it's completely insane. The way taxes work, blue, is since I'm a professor at a college, make $150,000. I don't, trust me. You're thinking, man, I'm going to cut back on my... All right, say I make that much money. I can have certain things deducted out of that. If I give money to the church, any money I put in a retirement account, medical expenses sometimes. There's a whole slew of things. If you get your teeth fixed and you spend enough money, then that can come off of that. So we have all these deductions. Let's say there's $75,000 of deductions. So how much is left? 75,000, very good, Frank. That's what I would pay taxes on. So the government would take that and they would, the first 25 would get this rate assigned to it and so on. And let's say, just to use some nice numbers, that I'm supposed to pay $10,000 in taxes. Now on this side, they have what they call tax credits. And here, if you have a child, you get a tax credit. So I could have over here, I'm supposed to pay $10,000, but for every child, I think it's up to $2,000, or is it $2,000? Right, so I've got 3 kids. So what the government does basically says, we're going to take $6,000 of the money you owe and wipe that out and only pay $4,000. I'm not sure if only pay $4,000 goes together, but only $4,000. So that's a tax credit. Over here we have deductions. Sometimes that engineering is done here. Other times it's done there. And this child tax credit, that the really, really crazy thing is, for me, after I do all of this, the income for the federal government that I pay taxes on is 0. I don't know, it wipes it all out. And over here, I still get this money. So they send me this money. That is what I got in trouble for. I was trying to monkey with the numbers so that they weren't giving me money. I thought, this is not my money, And that's where they came after me. And the state said, oh no, you gave me 2 different numbers here. And so finally I said, okay, I'll take it if you're going to force. They were going to make me pay all kinds of fines and penalties and stuff. So I took it. What can I say? But anyway, that's a tax credit. The term there, it's a refundable tax credit. It doesn't matter if I have any taxes for it to offset. It comes back to me anyway. So, anybody want to have a large family? It doesn't offset all the expenses, but it is, I don't know, I still think it's a little bit upside down. But, hey, if somebody has to get the money, it might as well be me. So all right, how do we get to that? All that to say, it's used for engineering. So you might hear people talk about tax deductions or tax credits, and it kind of depends on which side. Is it coming off of your income, or is it being credited over here on how much you have to pay? And there's things that go both directions. Actually, kids, you get a tax deduction for having a kid, and then you get this child credit too. So there you go. Have a large family and retire. No, I'm kidding. It does not offset the expenses. All right, now let's look at some of the pieces of our tax code. So first piece is the income tax, what we've been the main thing we've been talking about. All right. A couple of things. This income tax is a progressive tax. Often people say, well, that means the more you pay, the more you make, the more you pay, which is true, but doesn't really nail it down for what it means. If we have a flat tax of 10%, and Joy was the one in the wrong seat here. She makes $100,000. She pays $10,000, and I don't know, Jacob is participating. He has a bad job. What's that? Because I make $150,000, we need somebody to pay me. But even with this flat tax, the more you make, the more you pay. Okay, so that's not exactly what we mean by a progressive income tax. A progressive income tax would work like this. We'll use this 10% on 0 to 30,000. 30,000, and 20%. I'm completely making these numbers up. This is not the real tax code. And 30% on 100,000 plus. Right, so all of who was it? Olive Jacobs, would be here at 10%. He'd pay that $2,500. Joe would pay $3,000 on the first $30,000, and they pay 20% of the rest. So that'd be $14,000. She'd pay a total of $17,000 as opposed to the $10,000 with the flat tax. So the progressive income tax really is, it's saying this percentage goes up. All right, does everyone understand the difference? Joyce got it? You're going to quit working now? That's why Reagan, this number was 80%. He had made enough money to get to that point. And so why work? Everything I make from here on out this year, I'm going to pay 80% to the government and just quit. Quitter. I don't blame him. Especially to hit that tax bracket, you're making enough money to live on, so you'll be fine. Okay, so it's progressive. That's what is meant by progressive. This percentage goes up. All right, we are literally taking the most successful people in our country and hammering them with a higher penalty. You know, this is your penalty for being good. Now, maybe for the basketball team, this will work pretty good. You know, the teams that score the most points, we do something to them. We break their kneecaps at the halftime or something. But in a sports world, we wouldn't accept that. I mean, they would say, no. I mean, they earned those points. Why are we going to punish them more, other than our emotional desire for revenge? But we accept it here, okay? Accept it here readily. So. All right, so it's progressive. That is what is meant by that. And the top rate, it fluctuates. I think it's 34.4 or 0.6 or something like that today, this number here. And if you hear someone saying, what tax bracket do you fall into? What they're asking is, how far down this chain do you make it? Do you make it into that top bracket or the 15 bracket or whatever it is? That they want to know how far down you get. So, for most of us, it'd be zero. We're in the zero tax bracket.
Has it ever been where like the poor people and the rich people just pay like the same percentage?
No. That would seem,
Be that way?
yeah. Yeah. Well, that would be a step in the right direction at least. So that's a flat tax. I mean, that's what the term flat tax that liberals scoff at. So, all right. Who's the pizza guy? No, the Godfather's guy that ran for president.
Really?
It was last election cycle. He lost in the primaries. He had a 999 plan. 9% income tax, flat, a 9% sales tax, and I forget what the other 9 was. What's that? Herman Cain, yeah. Anyway, that was his 999 plan, wanting a flat tax. And liberals make fun of that to no end. So, all right, let's keep going here. Progressive. Somehow that all fit there. Second thing here is that this tax is collected through withholdings from your paycheck. You get paid, and your employer yanks this out right off the get-go. Actually, several pieces get yanked out from the top. What happens basically is your employer guesses, with your help, what your income is going to be for the year, and then pulls the income out based upon that. All right, so for the case here that Jacob made $2,500, his employer would pull out money so that he would be paying $2,500 by the end of the year. And then once the whole year is done, when we file our taxes, we take what we actually earned and figure out how much we were supposed to pay and compare that to what we paid. And that's what, when we talk about filing our taxes now, that's really what it is. We look at what we paid and we calculate what we should have paid. And either we make up the difference or we get a refund back from the government. The refund back from the government really is, unless you're getting free money like I am, it's kind of a raw deal because you're given the money all year that you don't have to, and then they give it back to you without any interest. Okay? If you have extra money, I'll take it and hold on to it for a year and give it back to you anytime you want. But anyway, that's I've heard people say, "Oh, that's my savings plan. I max out my income taxes so I get a big tax refund." And that, I mean, possibly if you're so undisciplined that you can't save the money, yes, you'd at least get that big chunk of money all at once, but probably going to waste at that point anyway. So, okay, so it's taken out of our taxes. If you look at your taxes, you'll see stuff taken out of that. So, two other things here to mention real quick. There is something called the alternative minimum tax. This is still with the income tax, the AMT. This is aimed for those evil rich people. I'm not sure who those evil rich people are, but they're all over the place. Evil rich people. And what it does, it sets a minimum, right? If Joy figures her taxes out and she gets all these deductions, and instead of paying the, was it $17,000 we figured, she has all kinds of deductions and loopholes, and she works with the evil, conniving attorneys and lawyers, you know, the kind she hangs with. And she gets it down to $9,000 or something. This alternative minimum tax would kick in if she makes enough money. And what it does basically is says you made $100,000, no matter what you do with deductions and things, you've got to pay at least $15,000 or something. It's kind of a floor that you can't go below. Okay? So it's aimed at rich people to make sure they pay their fair share, which isn't crazy in itself. They pay their fair share. Okay, so that's the AMT, alternative minimum tax. So, all right, one other thing to mention with this is that corporations also pay this thing. They're considered a legal entity, so they have to pay an income tax. The numbers are different for corporations, but there's a corporate income tax. In the eyes of a law, a corporation is a person.
And their money is free speech.
What's that?
And their money is free speech.
Yeah. So there's if the corporation earns money, if they have a profit at the end of the year, then they've got to pay an income tax on that type of thing. So they pay their employees and other things, and after all those expenses are done, then they have to worry about this income tax at the end. But there is an income tax for corporations as well. All right, let's move on here. The next is FICA, Federal Insurance Contributions Act. FICA on your pay stub. All right, other than the income tax, this is the second biggest piece. This pays for two things, Social Security and Medicare. Let's see here, a total of, well, let me just give the breakdown. The Social Security piece, you pay 6.2 of your income, and this is just a flat rate up to a certain amount. Once you hit, it used to be 90,000. It's probably higher now. Once you go past that, you stop paying this. So I've never really had to worry about, am I going to hit that floor or that ceiling yet? But 6.2%. That's for the Social Security side. For the Medicare side, you pay 1.45%. Okay, and your employer has to match it. So whatever you pay, your employer matches the same amount. So if you hear people talking about, how expensive it is to have an employee and things like that, this is a cost of having an employee, and I don't know, somehow you not paying it makes it better or different, or at least you don't notice it. So, okay, so that's FICA insurance, pays for those types of things. And then I just have a list here, some other ones. You could just keep the list going if you want. There's unemployment insurance, so that if you become unemployed, you can get money. It's just 1.2%. It's paid by the employee. You don't pay this, but they do. I'm sorry, the employee. The next one is paid by the employer. Unemployment insurance. There's a retraining of displaced workers tax that your boss gets to pay. Kind of does what it sounds like. If you've ever heard of job training programs or that type of thing, this money goes to pay for that type of stuff. There is a fuel tax laid out by the national government. And these numbers are a little bit old, so it might have changed, but it's around 18% for gas per gallon and 24.4 cents per gallon for diesel. It's really ironic to hear our government talk about these evil corporations that make so much money selling fuel. They make more money than the corporations do. Right? We're talking about somebody making money on selling fuel. It's the U.S. government. They have more profit on that. So, all right, and the last thing here for federal taxes to mention are transfer taxes. If Joy wants to give some of her hard-earned money away to her grandchildren, since she's got the big pile, if you give them too much, you're going to have to pay taxes. So you're not going to give them too much. I will spend it just to save the taxes. So, But there is a transfer tax. It comes in different pieces. There's just a flat gift tax. If somebody, your grandfather wants to give you $50,000, just a gift, this is going to kick in and you're going to have to pay some taxes on that. I agree, it's stupid. If your grandfather dies and leaves you some money, if there's enough money involved, right, it does require several $100,000, which I know sounds outrageous. But once my house is paid off right now, it's worth about $160,000. And if I have any savings at all, it's not outrageous to think that this will kick in even for me. So anyway, the numbers seem high, but not outrageously high if you save your money at all.
Do you have to pay taxes, like if you win a lawsuit or something and you get money?
Yeah.
Even if, like, if you're giving the money to maybe like an education fund, like.
The government wants this cut first. So even lottery winnings, you got to pay your taxes. Except for, what was the lottery that we determined it was? Oh, the car lottery in China. I don't know if you have to pay taxes on that. But so, all right. So transfer tax. So that gift tax. When you inherit money, if there's enough money involved, there's a tax on that. So
it's not just like the pure cash, so to speak, of inheriting, but like if you inherit a house.
Oh yeah, yes, it would go on the value of the house. Yeah. You might have heard stories of somebody inheriting a house from grandpa or something, and them having to sell it because of the taxes. They couldn't afford this estate tax. So.
For the gift, how would they monitor that? You don't report that if it's just a gift,
And cash.
Yeah, you're right. You could avoid it and just pay cash.
but I mean, not even cash, but if you just set up two accounts and transfer money from one to the other.
You're right. They might not ever catch it, but if they did, it would be bad. And we're talking about large sums of money, tens of thousands of dollars, not.
Well,
Not
I know, but I mean, just.
But yeah, you're right. You could just avoid it.
That's like, here, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So I know some people that had a rich grandfather who was wanting to avoid the death taxes when he died, having to pay all the taxes. So he maxed out every year how much he could give every grandchild before he started paying taxes. Gave them the maximum every year. Anybody want a rich grandfather? So, but it was trying to avoid some of these taxes. So, all right. So taxes: live, eat, breathe, drive anywhere, or die. There's taxes no matter where you look. So it's all over the place. All right. So that is taxes, federal taxes. Let's talk about some state and local taxes. And I'm just going to list these because we've got to get to reforming taxes. Let me see. On the state level or local level, there's often income taxes. The state of Indiana has its own separate income tax. So I don't pay any federal income taxes. But on the state side, I do. They got to come up with some more deductions and credits so I can wipe out my income. So there's an income tax often on states. Counties and cities often also have that. Porter County, about 8 or 9 years ago, we joined the modern world, and we now have our own income tax. I feel privileged. And if you're really lucky, you can live in a city like Chicago and have a city income tax. You have the national income tax, the state income tax, the county income tax, and a city income tax. If you hear people talking about, the effective tax rate in a certain city is 50% or something like that, they're taking all those layers of income tax and putting them together, and that's how much leaves you effectively. So often on the state and local level, there's all of those taxes. States often have a sales tax. Right? There'll be a new thing for the national government to have a sales tax that Herman Cain was proposing, but states often have a sales tax. I should back up. Some states don't have an income tax. Places like Florida, and not only is it warm there, but there's no income tax. So lots of retirees go down there to avoid that. But some don't have a sales tax at all. States often have a tax on, very generically called sin taxes, but taxes on cigarettes and liquor and stuff like that. They'll tax them. Sin taxes. So, it is ironic. They tax them. On one hand, they say, we're trying to discourage their use. But they need the income. They really don't want people to quit smoking because they need the money. So anyway, often those types of taxes are states. And then often states also have a gas tax. So you have another layer on top of the federal ones. Drive into Cook County, Illinois, and you'll see the prices jump. Part of that is the living expenses in Chicago are higher, but also there's another layer of gas tax that you face over there. So, okay, so there's often, there's a whole other slew of taxes on the state level to deal with. All right, last thing. What would be the best way to reform this whole thing? And often I like to get you guys to discuss this a little bit, but let me at least give you some ideas. And then we can have a quick discussion because we just have about 5 minutes. Some ways that we could reform this thing. We could go with a flat tax. Just 9% across the board, like Herman Cain said, or 10%. Pick the percent, whatever, straight across the board. We could get rid of the income tax and go to a sales tax. Talk about changing our lives. No longer would your employer have to keep track of the W-2s and W-4s, and you have to file your taxes. All that's gone. You just get taxed when you spend your money. I would give you great incentive to save. Right? So national sales tax. Some people have called for just simplifying the tax code. We talked about all the engineering and the tax deductions and the tax credits. Just simplify it and get rid of most of those tax deductions and credits. Simplify the tax code. It was that discussion that brought up the Democrats' simplified tax code plan. Put down what you make, send that to us. Those are some that have actually been proposed and brought up. I want to at least propose one more that we would be branded Neanderthals or something for, but we'll see what you think about it. Just a flat head tax. Just everybody contributes the same amount. You don't have to give your head, Joy. Just so much per person. The federal government needs $1 billion. We take the population, do the math, everybody kicks in that amount. What's that? $5. It'd be more than $5.
$1 billion, $300 million, $3 and some change.
Yeah.
Per person.
It would be more than that, but yeah.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
You get even more.
Just a straight head tax. So what do we think? What would be a good way to do this? Sales, who said that? Okay, sales tax, I would not argue with that. Pretty much any way would be a step in the right direction. So sales tax, I would be okay. That would drastically, talk about changing our whole life. Tax accountants would scream bloody murder. We'd have that whole industry disappear, and there'd be stories about unemployment created by this new tax. Like there are, if you've paid attention to Walmart, I keep hearing these stories about unemployment, or now that they've identified 8 or 9 places around the country that are food deserts. There's no grocery stores anymore because Walmart went out of business. So anyway, it's bad. They were evil when they came, and they're evil when they leave. It's kind of like with women, guys. They're going to be upset no matter what. So you might as well do what you want. Somebody might as well be happy. Rather than both of you be upset, you might as well be happy. They're going to be mad at you no matter what. Okay, so just do what you want. So anyway, Walmart. Flat tax, that was the sales tax. All right, other comments. I'm only mostly joking with that comment. Other thoughts? Flat tax? Okay, just straight across the board. What do you think about just a head tax?
Enumeration, like it used to be, like the original intention.
Oh, that would be those dead white slave owners. You want to go back and listen to that? I'd love to go back that far, but even just throw that out and just run it across the board without any basis on the population. It would actually effectively do that, but
doing that in conjunction with running it through the state instead of getting
then the states collect it.
Yes.
Yeah, that would be great. I'd at least like to float the idea that Joy's going to give us.
So I was just thinking, wouldn't a flat head tax, wouldn't that discourage families to an extent?
Possibly. But
You would.
if a large family wants to go to Disney World, they pay a head tax basically, so much per person. They're wanting more people to experience Disney World, so they pay more. Right? Anywhere else in life, really, we accept the head tax. Right? You want to go to the buffet in Michigan City? You don't walk in, most cases, there are some like this, and you say, well, this is my income last year. What do I pay? You walk in, and it's $8.99 a person, and anybody wants to pay can come in. So it would be fun to hear liberals scream about that. But really, everybody is getting the same protection. Same police, same military. So I would not be against something. There are people that own lots of property and things like that, and in a sense they are getting more protection. But at least just going across the board with a head tax. So, all right, I would like to at least mention one other thing as we're leaving. What about people like me that pay no federal taxes? I actually get money back. Is that fair? I can say yes. No. I put a bunch in the offering. That's enough. And well, actually, you guys did get a lot of it last year. You got almost all of it last year. The roof on my house. that was my child tax credit last year, a new roof. Is that fair or right for people to pay no taxes? Really, it's not. I mean, if somebody pays no taxes, goes overseas, and gets held as a hostage, the U.S. government is going to go and free them, regardless of how much they paid in taxes. I mean, that is major. I mean, we have everybody's getting that same protection, the same privileges, the same rights, and we've come to just it's ingrained into us that, well, you know, some people are poor, they shouldn't pay taxes. We wouldn't say, well, some people are poor, I guess the police shouldn't protect them. We're just saying, well, some people are poor, they should get free police protection. They should get free fire protection. All right, and no, I think everybody should contribute. So, all right, taxes. Comments, questions? We're at least finished. So, all right, see you next time.